Now, finally today, as we've discussed before on the programme, it's not just the Prime Minister and his recent Tory predecessors who've been U-turning so much they could probably solve the energy crisis by attaching themselves to some sort of dynamo. No, the Labour Party leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has also performed the most astonishing of policy position reversals. And I'm delighted to be able to discuss this now with my next guest. Atul Hatwal is from Labour Uncut. And firstly, I want to explore the 10 pledges on which Sir Keir Starmer stood to be the Labour Party leader. He promised abolishing tuition fees. He promised freedom of movement with the EU. He promised nationalisation of rail, of mail, of all these different utilities. And then he abandoned them. What went on?
I think we can draw a broad conclusion that the world was different back then. When Keir Starmer ran for leader, it was pre-COVID. It was pre the world of rampant inflation. It was pre the spending squeezes that we're facing now. It was also, frankly, a politician running an election and an internal election. And I think what happened and how people pitched themselves in 2019, we only have to look at some of the promises that were made in the Conservative manifesto to see that the world has moved on, and when the facts change, so your approach needs to change. And I think it's as pretty sort of straightforward as that.
Is this what we can now expect from our politicians, though? One group say, well, the other lot are U-turning, so we might as well U-turn, and the other lot say the same thing. Is this just sort of a very low bar for our politicians to stand at? Can we believe anything they say at election time?
Well, I think there's different timelines here. There's policy positions that politicians would have held 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Policy positions before huge events. For example, Liz Truss was Prime Minister. She was elected by the Conservative Party membership, having campaigned passionately to stay in the European Union. Times change, policies change. And I think we can give people and politicians the benefit of the doubt sometimes in that they'll change their views. Where this becomes egregious is over very short time periods where the facts haven't changed. It's just their comfort level and they've come under attack and suddenly they spin a U-turn. And I think that is where trust and integrity come more to the fore. If you said one thing in August and have U-turned on it by September and then U-turned again on it by November, that's what stimulates a lack of trust. If you say some things which are demonstrably proven to be lies, as happened with the Prime Minister before last, Boris Johnson, on Partygate, that's what undermines trust. But when the facts change and the circumstances change, the public expect a responsible government to reflect the new reality.
Now, I want to explore the new reality that we're in as a country, because, of course, your campaign, Labour Uncut, has been opposing many of the austerity measures that the country's seen over the last decade or so. And we're now going into a new period that some people might describe as austerity 2.0, where the government tried to spend more than it took in tax under Liz Truss. And as a result, the markets took fright. As a result of an expected fiscal loosening, gilt yields rose, the cost of borrowing rose, and everything became tricky. Does that make your campaign, does that raise questions for your campaign about whether or not austerity is really a political choice? Clearly, if the country tries to spend more than it takes in, the markets are going to go haywire.
I think there are three parts to this. Number one, the key with the markets was a credible medium-term plan. They just didn't believe that enough money would come in. So that's part one, which is it doesn't mean one doesn't have to indulge in egregious and horrendous cuts immediately. One just has to produce a plan that works over an economic cycle. Number two, we have to, and this is just a truth of life, we have to increase the amount of money coming in. And that means probably changes to how taxes are dealt with. It means maybe looking at taxes across the board on how normalising or standardising how taxes on income are handled. And I think The Labour Party and Keir Starmer's talked about that in the past. And it also means reform of public services in the medium term, because we are in a short-term crunch, but equally in the medium term, to get best value for money, public service reform is a hugely important strand of thought. It doesn't address the sort of the today problem, but it'll help the tomorrow challenge be addressed. So those are the three sort of strands: long, medium to long term, credible with the markets, increase the base of the resources coming in, and also look strongly at public service reform to make our services more efficient.
I wonder how much difference there is now really between the Tory and the Labour Party, given that a lot of that is what it's expected to come out of Jeremy Hunt's fiscal plan on the 17th of this month.